All right, guys, we gotta be smarter about what we bite on, okay? I want everyone to go outside. We're gonna run Red Rover on 3.
What about you, Tony?
I'm gonna run around in circles, flat my arms, and make engine noises like this.
When it comes to playing, we kids are the pros.
We're eating right, too.
We fuel up.
To play 60!
Your school doesn't have a program? Be a leader. Start one.
Click today and join the movement.
Hello, and welcome to Road to Recovery, the show that offers hope and help and healing and wholeness for those who are struggling with addiction, or maybe a family member or friend who is struggling with addiction to drugs or alcohol, or maybe other types of addictions as well. We so appreciate you joining us for this program. We've received such wonderful and warm and supportive response to the program, and we so appreciate all of those comments, and we encourage you to keep up the good work as we continue to partner with you to make our community a stronger, healthier, safer community in which to live, work, worship, and raise a family. I'm Steve Rao, and I have the privilege of co-hosting this program, Road to Recovery, with our friend Tricia Saunders. She's the Executive Director of the Recovery Center. Welcome back to Road to Recovery.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We have the privilege of talking to all kinds of people in our community that help with this issue, and our guest today is no exception.
Absolutely. We're really pleased to have him here.
And that is our Sheriff, Dave Phalen. Sheriff, thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's good to be here.
We have the privilege of doing radio and television shows kind of together,
yes,
we have been remiss in not inviting you before now, so thank you for coming and sharing with us a little bit. You obviously see firsthand the challenges of addiction and the kind of corollary results, the negative results of addiction. We want to hear about that, but first tell us a little bit about your history and background. Where are you from originally?
Well, originally from Columbus, and grew up in kind of a lower middle class neighborhood in Columbus, and about 22 years old I was in college, but I ended up joining the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. That's been about 43 years ago. So,
wow.
So joined the Washington, D.C. Police Department. It was a great place to learn how to be a policeman. I was there for a period of time, and then was kind of homesick, missed my parents and family, and moved back to Columbus and joined the Columbus Police Department, and served there for about 27 years, and then was elected 12 years ago to the post of Fairfield County Sheriff.
I'm glad to hear all that. I
Yeah,
had no
you didn't
idea,
know
but
that.
it makes
I
it
think-
sound like you've been around for 100
Makes-
years.
it
and
makes
I know
it,
you
yeah,
haven't.
I'm like surprised I can hardly get around it now, right?
Yeah, you did
Yeah.
play Ebenezer Scrooge in
I
a
did
play
play that.
once,
I did
and
play
he was an old guy, I think.
And I was kind of flattered when I got the role at first,
Right.
but then they said it was more like on disposition and age as
Oh.
opposed to talent.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so it was a setback.
Yeah, a little bit of a setback there. So you've obviously been at this police work for quite some time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, talk to me about some of those changes.
Well, I think the biggest change, in reflecting back to my days in Washington, D.C., if you looked at individuals that were using heroin and opiates and those type of things, primarily heroin, it was like in very deplorable neighborhoods. You'd see the guy sitting on the curb, kind of nodding off. You really didn't see that outside of that community. Drug sale and activity was confined to typically poor geographical areas of cities throughout the United States. So we really didn't see it in suburbia. In fact, I like to say when I was in high school, if someone even wanted to get involved in drugs, the chances are they couldn't find it. So things have really changed a lot over the years, and I think one of the biggest changes, the biggest dynamic in changes, is when they came up with crack cocaine. At that time, cocaine, you had to snort it or shoot it, but when they figured out a way that product could be smoked, then all of a sudden you saw it leave the inner city, leave the deplorable neighborhoods, and kind of go out into the whole community. And for the first time in the early 80s, we started to see crack houses and drug turfs and all those kind of things. And so we've seen a lot of changes, and even in Fairfield County. in
Yeah.
the last 12 years.
Well, I was going to ask that, specific to our county. Being the sheriff for 12 years, you've kind of had a front row seat to what has been developing here as the challenges, and let's face it, a lot more folks joining the ranks of those in addiction. Tricia, you've seen that in your numbers, haven't you?
Yeah, we certainly have, and it's interesting. Always, the sheriff's department deputies are really good at telling us kind of what the next trends are going to be before we even see them at the recovery center. But we've seen a lot of changes.
You've seen that trend, haven't
Yes.
you? So what do you see as maybe some of that trend and maybe a reason for that trend?
Well, I think when you look at trends, you also have to look at the people affected. If I looked at our prisoner base 12 years ago, there would be some kind of common denominators. You would see the prisoners would be people from typically dysfunctional or broken families. You would see many that came from maybe not a good school system. You'd see folks where they didn't have a faith. You would see the folks that were exposed, or young people were exposed to a lot of trash on the media. So you would see kind of all these negatives, family life's deplorable, school, who they're hanging around with, their peers, they didn't have a faith, the media. So if all those things were kind of down here, that was kind of the group that was in the prison, in our jail, because we
Sure.
talked to them, and these kind of big five denominators were there. Well, today, what we find now is we have a percentage of everything's good. They come from wonderful families. They're involved in a church. The parents are real protective about what they see on the internet and kind of things. But all of a sudden, we have a whole different group of prisoners, a whole different group of people involved in the criminal justice system, and that is primarily due to the opiates, where they've been introduced. And a lot of times, and Trish can speak to this, certainly a lot better than I can, where you'll have maybe a young girl and she'll go out with a guy, and maybe he's a little bit older, and he will be the one that will introduce her to the pills and things like that. And within a few months or years, you have a young lady from a wonderful family that's a heroin addict, that's in our jail, that's in the criminal justice system. So we've seen that big dynamic. When I became sheriff, we had about 100 prisoners. 8 to 10 would be females. Today we border around 300, and out of that group we have 70, 80 that are females. And,
Wow.
And almost all the females are heroin or opiates addicts, just
Yeah.
about. And with our male, we're probably 60%.
Let's see, that consistent with what you're seeing, Tricia, at the
Yes,
Recovery Center?
yeah, it is. Around, I would say, 7 or 8 years ago, we saw predominantly men, and more in the 30s and 40 age range.
Right.
And now, over the last few years, 60% of the people that we see are women, and very young, in their early 20s. So definitely things have changed. And I think it's a valid point that you made, that we can do everything right as a parent. I think there's so much guilt a lot of times when addiction
I do
happens
too.
in a
I do
family,
too.
but we can do everything right, and things don't always turn out that way. So.
Right.
Now, I know your job is obviously to find those who are doing things illegal and to incarcerate them. But there's been talk, certainly in our county, but outside our county and across the country, about finding a way, they call it the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, to, obviously there's price that has to be paid for doing something illegal. They need to be corrected. But there's the rehabilitation side of things as well. How would you respond to somebody who says, is there a better way to help those who are struggling? As you're saying, the percentage is rising, those people who have been involved or addicted to drugs. Is there a way that you could kind of partner with others to help the rehabilitation side along with the correction side?
I don't think there's any doubt. And being part of the opiate task force and being part of a lot of these community groups, that we work in partnership with them. We understand that it's a revolving door, that a lot of the people in our jail have been there countless times before. I think the average opiate and heroin addict has been there maybe 5 different times. So we certainly, as part of the law enforcement community, believe that the best chance that they have is to get well. In other words, to get treatment, to go to some place like Grace Haven, to be involved with the recovery center. All those components are important to stop this revolving door where they're involved in the criminal justice system, they're in jail, and unfortunately, for a host of different reasons, we really do not do a lot of things inside our facility for that. One of the problems we have on a lot of different levels, whether it's the jail ministry or whether it's family visits or whatever, is the fact that where we house our felons, our most serious, it's the building's very old, and it really doesn't lend itself, the way the building is laid out, to having classes, to having this kind of interaction, because they're really just kind of away in cells, and we don't have the luxury of having an area where they could be in different groups or getting some help.
Yeah, from the treatment standpoint, we have very strict HIPAA confidentiality laws and regulations that we need to follow, so that is an important factor. We have had discussions about ways that we can provide services during a person's stay in jail, and we're committed to continuing those discussions, but there are some challenges, and
yeah, it's even more,
well.
it's a little bit easier with the misdemeanors, with the less serious charges, because those facilities, we do have some common areas where they could meet with, as you know, with clients.
Yeah, very good. If you had the opportunity to speak directly to somebody who is struggling with addiction, obviously that addiction will lead to criminal activity, which splinters the family, creates problems for employment and getting a job later, because now you have a record and those kinds of things. If you had the opportunity to speak directly to an addict or the family member of an addict, what would you say to them?
I would say, first of all, do not lose hope, and understand that many, many people have been exactly in the situation they're in, whether it's the person that's an addiction or whether it's the family. So don't kind of say there's not a lot I can do, there's not much hope here, but go ahead and seek resources. Don't be afraid to confront the person, and trust your instincts, because many times those gut instincts are right. I cannot tell you how many times a parent said, well, you know, my son or daughter, they were sleeping more, their grades kind of deteriorated, but I didn't think there would be any way that my son or daughter could be involved in some kind of activity like this. Don't be afraid to confront. Don't be afraid to go ahead and check the bedroom, to check with friends. And when someone comes to you, and I'm talking to the parents, and says, you know, your son or daughter, this is what's going on, go ahead and check it out, because a lot of times people will become defensive. They won't want to hear that. So first of all, there is hope. There is always hope. Secondly, there's people out there that want to help. And thirdly, have the courage, parents, to go ahead and confront when you suspect some kind of illegal activity, or you think a son or daughter may be addicted. They may not, but I think as parents, we've got to go ahead and make sure that we know what's going on.
It'd be better to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely. Trust your instincts.
Right.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah, if you think something's going on, there's probably something going on.
There probably is.
And so true. It's so easy to just kind of turn our head and say, it can't be happening in my family. And
Right.
that denial can be very strong. But you're not going to get to the root of the problem and correct it if you continue to overlook it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, powerful and important advice. It's what this Road to Recovery show is really about. There is hope. There is help. There are people that will come alongside you. But we also have a part that we need to play, and that is to be aware, to look for certain things, to not ignore the signs that we're seeing. So thank you for that advice.
And just one story I think kind of brings it home a little bit. A couple Christmases ago, there was a young lady, and I mean, it looked like it was all over. There wasn't hardly any hope. She had given up, probably had suicidal thoughts. The parents kind of gave up on her. She went through Grace Haven, and this has been a number of years ago. Christmas Eve, Loretta receives a phone call from her saying, I'm with my family, I've got a job at this thing, I've got to have this other child, everything's going good. And so Loretta said, that's the best Christmas present I could ever gotten.
Yeah, no
so
question.
there is always hope, and it's never too late. Things are never so bad that we can't have a fresh tomorrow.
Very well spoken. Thank you, Sheriff Phalen, for the work you do, your deputies, volunteers, really literally feet on the street, helping to make our community safe and better, with a heart to see those who are struggling with addiction to get whole and help, and providing that element of hope. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Road to Recovery. Been speaking with Sheriff Dave Phalen here, the Sheriff of Fairfield County. Join us next week at the exact same time as we'll continue on our journey down the road to recovery.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.